Welcome to the Mindfully Masculine podcast. This is Charles. Okay, we're getting toward the end of 5 love languages for men, and in this episode, Dan and I will be discussing apologies. We will cover the 5 apology languages, examples of good and bad apologies, the damage caused by poor apologies, how to prove that you're really sorry, and breaking the pattern of endless offenses and apologies, as well as some other topics. Please like or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast app, and also check out our full episodes with audio and video on YouTube. Thanks and enjoy.
Good morning, Charles. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you very much, Dan. How are you?
I am also well.
How's your week going? Today's Friday. We're recording on Friday.
Yeah, week's been good. I've gotten back into some healthy routines, planning my day on a daily basis, reviewing my day on a daily basis, and that really makes such a difference in terms of how well I work during the day, how much I enjoy doing the things that I'm doing, and being able to really stay on task and not let the little things distract me as much.
When you say planning your day on a daily basis, do you mean you get up on Monday and say, here's what I'm going to do today, or you're planning it in more advance than that?
Both, actually. I've got a little weekly planner that I handwrite out my schedule. So what I do is I translate that from my calendar, my Outlook calendar, to this weekly planner template that I've printed out.
Okay.
Because I've got that constantly in front of me. I don't want to have my calendar for email in front of me because I'm tempted then to check my email and get distracted from whatever I'm supposed to do. So if I need a quick reminder and my brain is like going all over the place, I'm like, hey, what am I supposed to be doing? I can take a quick look in front of me and I've got that written out there. So then I write that in advance for the week, like on Sunday. And then as the days go by, obviously plans change and meetings get changed and updated and everything else like that. So then every morning I will review what I've got, make any changes if I need to. And at the end of the day, before I leave my desk, I make any changes for the rest of that week that have occurred that day in that planner.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that it's accurate, so that when I'm reviewing it the next morning,
All right.
I'm up to date.
Cool. Okay. Now I understand your method.
Yeah, now you can sleep at night.
It's not a great thing more than that. Got a couple of NyQuil.
Huh?
That reminds me, I got to order some NyQuil to take to Europe with me.
Have you compared the pills to the liquids? Any chance with a NyQuil?
No, you know how my little kid palate is. I can't drink that NyQuil.
For whatever reason, the liquid seems to work better for me than the caplets.
Caplets.
But I think maybe because the caplets might be lesser dose. They say it's not, but anyway.
If you're doing 2 caplets or a whole bottle, then
Oh, no wonder, the whole bottle.
Okay.
Let's talk about the shot glass.
No, I can't remember. I must have had the NyQuil liquid once to decide that I would never drink it again. As no, the pills do the job for me very well.
Okay.
So,
Do you normally just take the 2? Okay.
yeah, and they help me to go to bed completely not congested, regardless of what the allergy situation is, or if I'm fighting a cold or whatever. They dry everything out and they put me to sleep. Sleeping in hostels with 4, 6, or 8 beds. I'm going to do everything I can to drown out whatever's going on around me. So that's going to be NyQuil, eye cover, earplugs, everything I can do.
Good.
Get as much quality sleep as I can in a public place with other people around me. Because I've got packed days and I want to have good rest for those days. A lot of early nights and early mornings.
We all know how important sleep is. Recently, I've been listening to a couple more people who are much more educated than we are about the latest science that's coming out. And it turns out, so we're always thinking the 3 foundational pillars, diet, exercise, and sleep.
Yeah.
What they're saying is sleep is way more important than any of them. And if you think about it,
Interesting.
one bad night of sleep significantly impacts everything that you're doing that day. It impacts your hormones, so you get hungrier, you eat out of control sometimes, you operate as if you're drunk, like drunk driving. I'm sure you've had that, right?
Yeah.
Whereas you have one bad meal, you might get a little congested, might get a little diarrhea or something like that, but it's not gonna really significantly impact your day. Same thing, you miss one workout or a couple of workouts. Not nearly as bad as having a bad night of sleep.
Right.
It just helped me refocus my efforts on getting that sleep and preparing for the sleep that day right from the time you get up, which as Huberman talks about, is not having caffeine for that first hour to 90 minutes of waking up so that you clear those receptors so you can properly get to sleep at night. I have been doing that, and I've been working out without caffeine, and it's not that bad.
Really?
Waking up and not having, I've been trying the decaf coffee, and sometimes I'm just like, I don't even want this. I don't want the decaf in the mornings. I'll make the full cup, leave it in my car, so as soon as I'm done with the gym, it's been that an hour or 90 minutes, I can hit that caffeine.
Yeah. The good thing is with travel mug technology as it's improved, I could get 3 or 4 hours easily out of a cup of coffee, and it's still hot enough for me to enjoy. Because once coffee cools down, I will not drink it. And I'm not talking about cold. I'm talking about even warm coffee. If it's cold enough that I can drink it without having to drink it slowly, I don't want it anymore. I want coffee that's so hot I have to drink with care. If it's not that hot anymore, I'm pouring it down the drain and starting over.
So do you do iced coffees at all?
Yeah, rarely. Generally, when I want a cold drink, I would rather have a lemonade or a soda.
Yeah.
So just iced coffee just doesn't rank as high for me on the list of cold drinks. I don't dislike it, but when I used to do it, it was iced caramel macchiatos, and it was the good stuff that had a lot of...
Basically milkshakes.
Right. Yeah. And to do just an iced black coffee, I can't do at all.
Yeah.
I have to at least have them put a splash of cream in there just to lighten it up a little bit.
Yeah, I'm the same way. And sometimes I'll put some artificial sweetener in there too, or some sugar to have it. Yeah.
It's got to kind of...
Yeah. I don't know. When it's hot, though, black is not a problem.
Yeah.
It's hot.
So you're going up to New Jersey tomorrow morning, right?
I am.
What time's your flight?
7. So I'm leaving here 4:15. Uber's got a nice little feature now.
Oh, yeah?
Where if you are going to the airport, you schedule the ride in advance, it will tell you what time you should arrange the pickup for or recommend it.
Nice.
So they calculate how far you are from the airport, what time your flight is, and they say if you want to be there 2 hours in advance, you need to arrange for 4:15, for example, right? Because I'm 45 minutes away from the airport. Perfect. That's what I was going to do anyway, based on my previous experience, but it was all done in the app. It was a very nice, seamless experience.
Okay, I need to check that out because I'm trying to decide what to do for my trip to Europe. When you start getting into that 10-day range, okay, do I want to park at the airport or do I want to leave my car here at your place and then either ask you to give me a ride one or both directions and then Uber, or you just Uber both directions here?
Yeah.
What was it running to Uber from here to there?
Usually it's about, with a moderate tip, it's about $50 to $55 each way. On the way there. On the way home, it's sometimes a little bit more depending on how busy it is. But
it still is probably going to be cheaper for me than parking, especially if I wanted covered parking.
Oh, yeah.
I'll have to.
And you get dropped off right at the
That's true, too. So there's no sitting on a bus and all that stuff. And
And I like chilling out before my flight and just, really trying to get in that vacation mindset as soon as possible. And part of that is feeling special by someone driving me around.
Yeah, I could see that. I fly out. My flight leaves at 8:55 on a Friday night. I'm thinking I need to get to the airport in the 6 o'clock range or international flight.
Yeah.
And there could be some traffic issues. And also I had a great haircut, Eleanor's, down in the Mills 50 area the other day. And I want to squeeze one more haircut and a beard trim in the day of my trip. So the day I get on the plane. So I got that scheduled, and I don't know, maybe I'll see what deals are available for parking, because there's a lot of cool sites out there where you just put in the airport you want to go to and it'll give you some comparative parking rates. But with my car, with it being an old rag top, I do try to minimize the amount of time that it spends out in the sun/rain.
Yeah.
And I was thinking either parking it here at your place and throwing my car cover over the top of it, or parking it at the airport, but getting it in a garage somewhere. And so I got to just figure out which of those feels the best.
Sure, of course.
Okay, let's talk about 5 Love Languages for Men. This was a good chapter. We're going to do number 10, The Art of Apologizing.
I'm sorry, did you just say this was a good chapter? Who
are you? This was a mostly good chapter. Oh, well, I'll get to the parts that I don't.
Oh, okay. All right.
So when it comes to apologizing, this wouldn't be the only resource I'd recommend. Even higher than this, I would recommend listen to Brene Brown's podcast, Unlocking Us.
Okay.
She does a 2-part episode with Dr. Harriet Lerner, who wrote a book called Why Won't You Apologize? The 2 episodes are I'm Sorry, How to Apologize and Why It Matters, Part 1 and 2.
Okay.
I would say that material is even better than this chapter on figuring out how you should go about it and what a good apology, an effective apology, sounds like versus what it doesn't sound like.
So what I'm hearing is you're saying they are both pro-apology.
Yes, they are both in favor of apologizing. And one of the things I think we've said
Interesting.
is that, or at least I've said before, and it really should catch on. I think it's really profound. The man who apologizes for everything and the man who apologizes for nothing share the same weakness. Because if you adopt some rigid thing of it's always all my fault or it's never my fault, either way you're wrong and your relationships are going to suffer as a result. So figuring out, okay, what do I apologize for? When do I apologize? It's an important skill, and your relationships, personally and professionally, will benefit from that. Because if you just get rigid with either, I'll always be the guy who's sorry for what happened or what I did, or I'll never be that guy, then
I think it's definitely easier to be one of those extremes.
Yeah.
You don't have to think about it.
Yeah, the binaries are always easier than the grays.
Well, grays require skills, but what you just said, right? It's a skill set. You need to think about it like a skill set. And I've, by going through this book and taking the quiz, realized it takes work, it takes thought to figure out, hey, 1, do you apologize? 2, how do you do it so that it is effective and it means something to you and the person that you're talking to? And that is a skill set, like you said.
Yeah, and this chapter does a pretty good job in selling the idea that, look, if this is a tool you can add, you're going to benefit from it. Because there's a lot of people who just, either their ego, their trauma, their whatever stops them from offering apologies that can be heard and accepted by a person they spend a whole lot of time around and they have similar goals, similar values, but you just can't get yourself to the point where you are able to repair from something that happens that puts a block or a disruption into the relationship. So let's talk about it. Done well, an apology can bring closure to tensions, conflicts, and hurt feelings. It can also change the way your wife thinks of you or your partner. What most people, and he makes a pretty good case here, that what most people look for in an apology is sincerity, and how sincere you seem is going to be directly related to how closely your apology matches to whatever their apology language is. And coincidentally, he has a book on the 5 apology languages that you could buy and read and put more money in his pocket.
But like you said, it's good information.
Yeah.
I've got no problem with him earning some dollars from this information.
Yeah. So you and I did take, there are 5 apology languages. Boy, that's convenient.
Yeah.
It really fits into the plan, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, what a coincidence. The 5 apology languages are expressing regret, accepting responsibility, making restitution, genuine repentance, and requesting forgiveness. And yeah, we both took the test. Mine is accepting responsibility. That's my number 1. And yours was what?
So the quiz calls it plan to change, but I think that's the repentance one that you just mentioned, actually.
I think you're probably right. Yeah, genuine repentance was number 4. Yes, and I had some points about that I think you'll find interesting and probably even agree with. Okay, so let's talk about the first one, expressing regret. So when you say that you regret something, and in all of these, you've got to be specific. The specifics are what count. Even to the point where I learned in one of my relationships, I had a partner that was willing to express to me the difference between saying, I'm sorry, and just saying sorry. That's something that would not have occurred to me to be a difference, but for her, it was a pretty big deal.
Thinking about it, it is for me as well.
Yeah, I can.
It definitely,
she laid out difference. She laid out the case pretty well. Okay, I can't really argue with that. That the I and the am sorry, the just sorry.
That's just for you. That's that for me. When I don't hear the I am, you don't really have you are not owning anything.
Exactly. It's yes. Sorry that
it's like handing a Band-Aid. It's like literally handing a physical Band-Aid. Oh, here you go. The sorry.
Or sorry some of that blue ice fell on your car. It's just, this thing happened and that's too bad. But yeah, the or the I am definitely makes it more of a, I have some responsibility in this too. And even if you say, sorry that I did blah, 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 it's still, I am sorry that I did
just
blah.
Throwing that word I in,
I know,
adds that sincerity that you mentioned before.
Yes, I think so too. And yeah, that was not something that would have occurred to me to ask for, but I get why that does matter.
And I get why people don't want to do it, because you feel vulnerable.
Exactly. Yeah,
right?
It does.
That's why that's good to Brene Brown, ironically,
right,
doing the whole, because that's probably, you feel really vulnerable whenever you're apologizing.
Yeah, and possibly shame. It triggers shame too, which is another one of her core competencies. So yeah, when you express regret, that does let you communicate, I am owning, I'm feeling some pain, I'm feeling some guilt about the action I took that has negatively impacted you in one way or another. As it's not just saying I recognize that you feel bad, it's also saying I feel bad because I played a role in you feeling bad. And the people who have that apology language, that's what they want to hear. They want to hear, I feel bad that I contributed to you feeling bad, and I take responsibility for you feeling bad.
Yeah.
Obviously not all of it, because you can't make people experience certain emotions, but you can own the fact that, yes, the actions that I took directly led to the state that you're now in. So he's got some pretty good examples of good and bad apologies, little cartoons in this book that I like, and I want to share those. So first we'll do the two bad apologies when it comes to expressing regret. I'm sorry I offended your parents, but it's not like you show them a lot of respect. And some of these are intentionally funny, and some of them are unintentionally funny. I'm sorry I offended your parents, but it's not like you show them a lot of respect. And then, I'm sorry I used that language with you, but I never claimed to be a choir boy. Okay. And the two things that both of those guys have in common is the word but. I'm sorry, but. And that's really, if you're fancy, you might say however. But what I've learned is that whenever you throw a but or a however into an apology, what came before it loses all meaning and all impact.
Yeah.
All that they're going to hear is what comes after the but.
That's the case no matter what kind of statement you're making.
Yes, that's true.
So I think probably affirmations and stuff, right?
When it's anything emotional, that's the case. If you're making a very logical, dispassionate argument for something that you're not emotionally invested in and the other person's not emotionally invested in, you can say blah, 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 however, blah, 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 blah. And people can hear that.
Yeah.
But when it's anything with an emotional impact on it, then it's going to be whatever you say after the but is all I'm going to focus on, and I'm going to ignore everything that came before it.
Yeah, it's a good point of distinction, whether it's emotional or interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so here are the two good versions that express regret. I know that I hurt you. I feel like a jerk for causing you pain. I'm truly sorry for what I did. And the last thing I want to do is disappoint you. I should have been more thoughtful. I'm sorry for making you feel that way. Now, Renata and I would both have a small issue with that one. I'm sorry for making you feel that way. It would, again, and there's a lot of people on mental health Instagram that have addressed this too, where while yes, it's true, you can't make people feel certain ways, you can still own that your behavior and your action have contributed or triggered, or whatever word you want to.
Yeah.
It didn't happen spontaneously. They didn't just randomly decide to feel a certain way. Like you had an impact on that. You're not in their brain making them choose emotion A versus emotion B, but you're certainly contributing to what they're feeling.
Okay. I'm having a hard time figuring out then how to phrase that without saying, I made you feel this way. I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah, let's see. Last thing I want to do is disappoint you. I should have been more thoughtful. I'm sorry my actions upset you.
Okay.
Something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, just, again, it's mostly just for me hearing Renata hammer it in therapy for years and years that you can't make people feel things. You can't make people do things.
Yeah, I can see what.
Do things, but you can't make them feel
right.
things.
Yeah, I can see why, because I think it's really important if you're going through anything that you're trying to heal from is what you talk about is taking responsibility.
Yeah.
And if you're accepting the fact that you can make people feel things, you also then accept responsibility that people can make you feel things.
That's a good point.
And then you're going to be like, not my fault. I'm not gonna do anything about this. This person's been crapping all over me, and
that's a good.
I'm powerless, right? I think it gives you that power.
Yeah, you either believe in a world where other people can make other people feel things, or you don't. And if you Yeah, if you believe in that, you have to take it where both people can make me feel things and I can make other people.
So I can see why she wants to die on that sword. Absolutely.
Yeah, I get that.
It's important.
Okay, so he does say an apology should be specific. I'm sorry for, and this is one of the reasons he says it should be specific is you should say exactly what you're apologizing for, because, and I've experienced this very often, the response will be, that's not why I'm mad. You apologize for A.
Yeah.
And by saying it specifically, they can say, okay, but that's not exactly what bothered me about what you said or did. What bothered me was this other thing instead. And then you can apologize for that thing, or generally don't have a knee-jerk apology. Oh, I'm sorry for that too. It's okay. Tell me more about that so I can understand.
Exactly.
Once
right.
you get the more information, then you're ready to make a decision to apologize.
Again, it comes down to validating and being clear with the communication. So really trying to understand, and ideally you ask beforehand, hey, can we talk about what I did or why you're upset so I can better understand.
Yeah. And as he says again, and we've already covered, under no circumstances do you throw buts in your apology. I'm sorry for, but, and I think we'll probably get to this too in another apology language. But the other thing I would say to avoid is, I'm sorry you were offended, or sorry, don't apologize for someone's reaction to your behavior, because
I'm sorry you felt that way.
Exactly. Do not say, I'm sorry you felt that way. You do that. Yeah. You're saying, I'm sorry for something you did. I'm sorry you reacted that way. I'm sorry you felt that way. I'm sorry.
Sorry you're weak.
Yeah, pretty much. It's, yeah. And that will only make things worse. That will not make things better. If you don't have something concrete that you can identify that you're sorry that you said or that you did, then you're not ready to apologize, and you need to either think about it more individually or ask more questions.
And I think the other thing to think about is, if you get this wrong, you're causing more damage than
certainly
what already happened. So it's got to be careful.
Yeah, that's why it's a good idea to go as slow as you need to go to not feel defensive. And it can be tough, because a lot of times after whatever the original offense was that started things off, the way that both of the people in the situation react to it, there's often things to apologize for as well in the argument that happened after the original thing.
Yeah.
And it can get easy to get into a tit for tat of, I did these three things wrong and I'll apologize for them, but you got to apologize for that you did wrong too.
And
then that
could spiral right
eventually.
wrong.
Yeah, nothing good ends up happening. Okay, so number 2, accepting responsibility. So this is mine, because generally what you want to hear with accepting responsibility is, I was wrong. That will communicate to the other person that the apology is sincere. One of the challenges that I run into in receiving apologies is there's these two aspects to an apology, or really your actions consist of the intent and the impact that they have on other people. So there's, what did you intend to do, and what was the impact that was felt by the other person? And as someone who is not a good apologizer, doesn't like apologizing, one of the easy excuses for me to go to is, yeah, but I didn't mean to do blah, blah, blah. It wasn't my intention that you would feel blah, blah, blah. And we'll get to that in one of the other languages. When you say or do something that offends your partner, yeah, but I didn't mean it that way, so therefore I have nothing to apologize over. And
that's similar to, sorry you're weak.
It is. It's kind of saying, you're upset over nothing right now, and so why would I apologize?
Or you can't handle things the way I do.
Exactly. Yeah, you have no reason. You have no logical reason to feel this way, so why would I apologize to you?
Okay, Spock.
I mean, look, I think we do that sometimes.
I comprehend this.
I certainly have done times where
yeah,
it's like you minimize the impact of your action because you didn't have negative intentions.
Yeah, look, I'm laughing, but I've done that so many times as a younger person.
Yeah, and the thing that triggers me about apologies sometimes is when the apology only focuses on the impact and does not address the intention at all. Like, I've heard apologies along the lines of, I'm sorry for what I did because it hurt you. And that does sound good on the surface, but where my mind goes is, okay, so you're only sorry about it because it hurt me. So therefore,
you don't think you did anything wrong.
You don't think you did something quote unquote wrong. It's got me thinking, like, okay, if you're sorry for what you did because it hurt my feelings, and my feelings getting hurt is the only reason that you're sorry. I have no way to predict what you might do in the future.
Yeah.
Then you might try to avoid hurting my feelings, but I want to rely on your set of values and your moral code to predict how you will or will not hurt me in the future.
Yeah, and you just clarified, that other person just clarified that their values and moral code is not the same as yours.
Correct. Exactly.
So now you're communicating, but not in a good way, or not something that's going to benefit the relationship.
It's not going to get me to feel more secure about the future.
Yeah.
When I think that this thing you did was objectively wrong, you think it was a negative action because it hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
Which, look, it's better than nothing, but it's still, we're not enough on the same page for me to feel secure that a future like this. Okay, so we resolve, when you do this exact thing, I feel negative feelings, and we both agree that's bad and that should be avoided. But it doesn't seem to translate to other things you could do or say that would also hurt me.
Now you just violated some trust in the relationship as well, because now you're worried that they're going to do something that you might question as morally or wrong based on your own beliefs.
For me, that's why
I've been there.
The accepting responsibility, the hearing what I did was like, I believe what I did was wrong, and here's why I think it was wrong, and here's why I won't do it again. I've got to hear those things. Otherwise, I can't look forward to the future with security and expect that it's not something close to that's not going to happen again. And that puts a lot of pressure on when you have a partner with accepting responsibility as their apology language, it does put pressure on the other person. They have to jump through some hoops that they may not feel like jumping through to offer that reassurance, to say, yes, what I did was wrong according to my own values, and I won't do it again. Or I'll put systems in place to not let it happen again, which is where we'll get to on the repentance side. Okay, so here's a couple more sample apologies that speak to accepting responsibility. A couple that do not speak to it. First, mistakes were made. Let's just leave it at that. That might be my favorite.
I was about to say, I love that one.
Mistakes were made. Let's just leave it at that.
Nothing by who?
Yeah.
They just existed.
Yes. And then the second one, we've already talked about. I'm sorry you're upset, but it's not like I haven't done that before. That's just who I am. Even if you stopped at, I'm sorry you're upset, that's still a bad apology, because you're apologizing for someone's reaction to your action, not for what you did. But it's not like I haven't done it before. That's just who I am. That goes along.
It's like your fault for not paying attention, right? To what kind of person I am.
Exactly. And we talked before about the excuse of I did my best. It's like the kind of things that make someone wash their hands and walk away from you are, sorry, I did my best, or it's not like I haven't done that before. That's just who I am. Yeah. Like, okay, then I guess we have nothing to work on here. So time to go. Exit stage left. Okay, so here's the good ones. The way I spoke to you was wrong. I was trying to justify myself, and what I said was unkind and unloving. I hope you will forgive me. And the second one is, I could try to excuse myself, but there is no excuse. Pure and simple, what I did was selfish and wrong. Both of those have the word wrong in there. Is also as somebody with this apology language, that's what I want to hear.
Yeah.
So I really identified, and that is in fact my apology language. Yeah, so the I'm sorry plus the I was wrong seem to be what people with this language need to hear. Apology language number 3, making restitution. This is where you feel like, not only do I need to say I'm sorry, not only do I need to take some responsibility, but I also need to try to make it up to the person. He uses the language, when a wrong has been committed, it should be paid for. I don't know, and some of his thoughts about punishment and condemnation in this chapter a little off to me. They're certainly very supported by the sacred text of his chosen religion.
Sure.
But I don't know that they're really supported by a more modern look at ethics or psychology. But we'll get into that. But after being hurt deeply, we need reassurance that the person that hurt us still loves us. And if this is their apology language, then that reassurance is going to be, how can I make this up to you? Or I would even say, better than how can I make this up to you? Hey, I think it would help me make it up to you if I did blah, blah, blah. And then let them react to, don't give them an apology and then ask them to do some homework.
Yeah.
It's give them the apology and then give them a suggestion on what you think would help to make it right. And then let them say, yes, that would be great, or but I really would need this, or you'd be the one to take on the effort of starting the conversation of what can make this right.
Yeah. Now, does he suggest that? I don't think he does, though.
No, that's me.
Yeah.
But
I agree with that.
Better.
But I think that's important, like you said, to not make them do work. Just, yeah.
That's the same way as when someone has suffered a loss and they're grieving, don't go to them with, what can I do to help? It's go to them with an idea of what you'd like to do, what you can do to help them, and then let them say yes, say no, or modify it. Don't stack on the homework of, I know you're grieving the loss of your fill in the blank, but now I need you to do some research and figure out what's the easiest way that I can help you with this.
Yeah. I think just making that offer of whatever it is, even if they don't want it, doesn't fit, I feel is a nice gesture, and I think helps build that relationship.
Yeah. Hey, can I bring you dinner tomorrow night? Or if not tomorrow night, some other night? Or is there something else? Just throw an idea out there that they can say yes to, or say no to, or say not this, but this.
Mm-hmm.
That definitely helps. All right. So here's some bad examples for people who making restitution works for. Do not say, why can't you let it go? I bought you flowers. Isn't that enough? And if you haven't already picked this up from us, generally buying flowers for someone as a way of apology is not the move. I mean, it can work along with the strategies in this chapter, but don't think I'm going to buy you something to make up for this bad thing that I did. Second one, if saying sorry isn't good enough for you, I don't know what to tell you.
Because I'm done.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no other option.
I made my one shot, and it didn't work.
Is the only way.
So here's what does.
So demanding.
I don't feel right just saying I'm sorry. I want to make it up. I want to make up for what I've done. What would you consider appropriate? Good. Again, I will always say start with an offer of something.
Yeah.
Would it work if I offered to do blah, blah, blah? I know I've wasted your time. May I give you some of my time to balance things out? So that's a good one.
And so I think what I just realized when you read the first one there, the positive one, that wasn't quite that great. I feel like if you are suggesting something, it's showing the other person you've got a deeper understanding of what happened as well.
Even if you're wrong, even if the thing you suggest isn't the right thing, it's still saying, hey, I want to make it up. Yeah, like with this, for example, start us down the path.
Yep.
I think.
Yeah, it's a better way of saying
because it's an effort. You're showing an effort. And because, even just thinking and trying to come up with a solution is an effort that a lot of us will not volunteer unless feel pushed.
Yeah.
It's essential to express that restitution in their primary love languages as well, which is very important. When you're trying to make up to someone, try to make up for them in a way that you think there's a good chance they'll respond to. If her love language, like this guy, is quality time, then say, hey, how can I make it up to you by putting aside some time to spend with you?
That's fair. You want to make the other person feel loved as easily as possible.
Yeah. So, and that's what this whole book is about. You make people feel loved as easily as possible by speaking to them in their love language. And so I would say that a making things right needs to almost be sprinkled in every apology, regardless of what somebody's apology language is. Like this idea of, hey, I want to do something to make this better than it currently sits. So I definitely recommend that. Language for genuine repentance. What did they call it on the
planned change?
Planned change. Okay, so this is an interesting one to me. Repentance is a biblical concept of changing direction, changing your mind, saying, I thought this was right, now I think the opposite is right instead. And I can appreciate how valuable that is because there are a lot of behaviors in life that you're not going to change until you have some sort of a spiritual realignment that says, all right, I used to think this was good. I used to think this was okay. And now something's happened where I think this other thing is okay instead. And so when someone expresses that to you, I think you've got a good chance of believing that their future behavior will be different. But again, it's not enough to just say it. Sorry, I was wrong. How can I make that up to you? To repent is to say, I'll try not to do this again. But even that falls a little short for me.
Me too.
Because I'll try not to do this again.
That's an out. I feel like I've had people say that to me.
Yeah.
And I understand nobody's perfect, but if you are starting with the word try, no matter what, to me, I don't really care enough to commit to this.
Yeah, and we know from things we've talked about before that just because you have a high level of motivation to change in the immediate aftermath of an argument that just happened because of something you did wrong, that doesn't guarantee future results. Because you could absolutely mean it right then when you say it, but are you going to mean it in 80% of moments for the rest of your life?
And that's why this is my primary, and the secondary is the restitution one, because that's like the one time. It's not a full change. It's, I'm going to make it up to you, and you do it that one time. And for me, okay, like that's fine. It's the beginning of change. But if you continue to do those things that you need to apologize for, and then you think you can just make up for it in that moment or right afterwards, that you're wasting my time. Like, I don't want to, I don't need a relationship with you, whether that's a friendship or a romantic relationship, whatever that is if there's mistakes being made, there needs to be change. Otherwise, we need to find different people.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's if somebody's apology language is genuine repentance, here's some of the ways they would describe an apology, an ideal apology. Show that you're willing to change and do things differently next time. I expect him to find ways to keep it from happening again. I expect a change of behavior so that the insult doesn't recur. I want him to have a plan for improvement, a plan to succeed and not fail again. I expect him not to go into a rage a few minutes later or do the same thing again. Yeah, this is all saying, okay, and really that's the part that I think is the most important when it comes to genuine repentance of, not only am I willing to say I was wrong, not only am I willing to say I was sorry, not only am I willing to offer some sort of restitution for what I did, but now I'm going to do the homework of developing systems, developing an environment, and developing habits that stop this from happening again, which is probably harder for most of us than all the other parts of the apology combined.
Yeah, I see how important that is, because if you basically, I feel like these types of situations don't happen at the beginning of relationships a lot of times, right? A lot of times we're also not really paying attention because all our hormones are going crazy. We have that limerence that we're going through for a while. But after a while, when that starts to wear off and people start to make mistakes and things, that's when you can see who they are as a person based on their reaction to the differences that are coming to light between the way you two operate, right? And so if you're going to continue on with a relationship, I believe, in my view, and there's a significant difference in terms of your values and what you're doing and what you're apologizing for, the change needs to happen. Otherwise, you need to go with a different partner at that point, like I talked about before.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, this is the most important thing in order to preserve the relationship moving forward. And I didn't pay enough attention to this specifically in previous relationships, and I let it slide way too much.
Yeah.
Into that comfort zone where a lot of us have been in relationships where, oh my God, I should have broken up with that person a year ago, 2 years ago, or whatever. Hindsight's 20/20, like the writing's on the wall. For me, this is one of those things where their mistakes were made on both our sides, but it was repeated and I just let it go too many times.
And that's the thing. When you're in a relationship, you're going to ask yourself often, okay, I'm not hearing what I would like to hear. I'm not seeing what I would like to see. But do I really want to die on this hill? And then
like, yeah, this is good. Sex is good. Or she's a great cook and makes my life easier. And it's going to be so much harder to find somebody else. And
there's all these ways that
lock yourself out of
the sunken cost fallacy. I've already invested so much time and effort into this person. What am I going to do? Start over with somebody else? Yeah, those things do happen. So let's read the crappy apologies for genuine repentance. I'm sorry. I know I've said that before, but this time I'm serious. Trust me.
That one hits home.
Yeah. And this next one, man. I am sorry, but if things I do keep offending you, maybe you're the one who needs to change. Did you ever think about that? Oh, yeah. I have said something almost word for word like that. Oh, yes.
God, dude.
Yes. Oh. And I feel embarrassed to say that, but I have offered quote unquote apologies very similar to that before. And
wow.
Yeah. And it has, had the result that you would imagine it would have. It was awful.
She was swooning?
No. No. And
that's basically saying you're a broken, bad person. and you're weak.
Yeah.
That's, oh boy.
Yeah. Look, if you're uncomfortable enough taking responsibility for what you've done wrong,
Yeah.
you will try to shift that blame onto whatever's in the room, and it's usually your partner.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I've done that. I've done that before, and it.
Let's be honest, nobody likes to feel like they've done something.
Of course,
now.
Yeah, that certainly doesn't excuse this.
It's how you manage that uncomfortable.
You actually have something to apologize to me for, which is what you're essentially saying in the moment.
You just made me feel bad.
Yeah.
I've got bad feelings.
Exactly.
You're making me feel like I did something wrong. So
Yeah.
it's on you, bro.
Oh yeah, that is definitely the hallmark of someone with some of those narcissistic traits.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, what I did was wrong, but you calling me on it made me feel pretty bad. So let's get into that. I know. It's all worse.
Let's get into what kind of bad person you are.
Yeah. All right, so here's what it sounds like when it's done right. I let you down by making the same mistake again. What would it take for you to begin to rebuild your trust in me? I know that my behavior was very painful to you. I don't ever want to do that again. I'm open to any ideas you might have on how I can change my behavior. And yeah, man, these ain't a lot more. This is really opening up the armor and say, take your shot, because you're putting someone else in the driver's seat to say, all right, you tell me what behavior you expect for me to prove that I'm an okay person.
Yeah. As I'm thinking about this, I feel like in order for you to be willing to do all of that, it'd be weird for you to do something so bad that you would need. I feel like if you've got that level of commitment and dedication,
right,
and comfortable being vulnerable, would you have ever done anything that actually requires you to do those things? I feel like that's going to be a rare circumstance.
Which is a great argument to say, if you become the person that can offer these kinds of apologies, that also turns you into the kind of person that will more rarely need to offer these kinds of apologies.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. You can't just snap your fingers and become a person who doesn't do hurtful things to your partner. But what is much, much easier is become the kind of person that's comfortable offering these apologies by practicing them.
Yeah.
And by becoming that kind of person, you will find yourself in the situation where you need to apologize less and less often.
And what I'm seeing too is in terms of the amount of work, but for me personally, the amount of effectiveness comes into how many human senses you engage in each of these languages. For example, even though my love language is words of affirmation, I need to hear, that's the next one, I need to hear more than just I'm sorry for whatever, right? Like for me, I need to also feel like you're doing other things. So that means, I'm not just hearing it, I'm able to see it because you're doing something differently. Maybe I'm feeling it tactilely or emotionally. I guess it's the sixth feeling, right? I think the more all senses.
Oh, you're sorry? Cook me a good meal. Bake me some cookies.
Smell and taste. It wouldn't hurt. I'm just saying that would definitely grease the wheels a little more.
I never have had someone say, I'm so sorry, I made you your favorite dessert.
So here's the thing. So you could add that to any of these languages, and now you've upped it, right?
Yes, yeah. 100%.
So,
the one thing I will say, though, is when it comes to showing genuine repentance, fortunately, we live in a culture where in the last decade, maybe 2 decades, but certainly in the last decade, we've talked a lot more about how to make habits and how to make good habits and drop bad habits. So when there are things like tiny habits, atomic habits, there's stuff out there where so few of us just innately have inside of us the knowledge that it takes to make a good habit. There are lots of resources, books, coaches, all sorts of things where it's like,
skill.
Hey, look, I keep bothering my partner by doing this thing over and over again, or by not doing this other thing enough as much as she'd like me to.
Yeah.
How do I set it up so that I don't have to feel like I'm constantly apologizing for the same thing over and over again? Pick up a book that talks to you about how to make good habits and how to break bad habits or replace bad habits. And you can develop that skill of, hey, it's important because like we learned in our series on tiny habits, if you're just relying on how much motivation did I wake up with this morning, that ain't going to cut it, man.
No.
It's not going to get the job done.
And something that is a little easier pill to swallow, I know a lot of us feel like I don't want to be vulnerable by admitting I don't know how to do something as simple as create a habit. It seems really simple. Well, you know what? Understand that it's not your fault. Like, you didn't go to school learning habits, learning communication in relationships. Most of us didn't, unless like you went to college and were becoming a psychologist.
No, we learned how to square dance.
Yeah. So it's like, forgive yourself and realize you weren't given those skills. Most people weren't given those skills unless you had an amazing, parent or
who modeled it, not just
who modeled. Right. Yeah, exactly. Or you went to get an advanced degree in college, study this stuff, pick up that book and learn like the latest research, because it's going to be more than worth your time, or get with a coach, because they'll teach you the easiest way to do it. And you're going to be less frustrated when you go and try and change. Well, look, what more do you want from me? This is just who I am. Like, you can get to that point if you don't know the easiest way to create those changes.
Yeah.
Because you're just frustrated because you just don't know it. You never learned it.
And I would even argue,
man, easy.
One of the worst things that could impact your relationship is if your partner sees you struggling to not do the same things that insult her over and over. Like, she sees you struggling and you're still not successful at it, then that's going to give her a sense of hopelessness that says, okay, look, I mean, he said he's sorry. I see him trying not to do it, but he can't help himself. So where do we go from here?
And he's not making any efforts.
No.
Try different things.
Right.
Either.
Yes.
He's just struggling and staying in a rut.
Yeah.
And not trying other things. And what is your potential for change?
Right. If your partner sees you struggling, doubling down on methods to fix these problems that are not working, it's going to be like, okay, so I can't really expect to see progress in this area.
The way you just said that kind of hit me like a ton of bricks, because I'm looking back at all of the relationships that didn't work out for me. And that was really the key. Was I saw them have these struggles with things. I didn't run away immediately, but they couldn't figure out how to overcome. And a lot of times they didn't make effort.
That's the thing.
Or the efforts they did make were minimal, and I felt like they gave up too easily on things, or never made the effort to begin with. And because of that, I think a lot of things that I started to distance myself a little bit, going, okay, this is not the person that I thought she was. And I don't see a lot of hope that she's going to become even move in that direction at this point.
No, I've been there too.
But I haven't communicated. I wish I was able to communicate that or take action when it hit me. Hitting me now doesn't really matter. It helps moving forward.
Yeah, translate it into your current relationship or your future relationships. Being in a relationship where you and your partner acknowledge that there are problems, that there are challenges, there are issues, and one or both of you are not really willing to try new things to solve the problem, it's okay. Then if all
reading books and listening to podcasts does not count for trying new things, by the way, people.
Yeah.
Even our podcast.
Yeah. Listening to a new podcast, it's still just podcast listening.
Yeah.
And
I'm absolutely so many dreams and ambitions of doing things that I get from podcasts and books that I don't ever do.
I found a new podcast or a new book that's going to solve all my problems, and then it never solves the problems.
Ice baths. Have not done that. Sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, and that's, I think when it comes to relationship issues, and I've said this before, probably on the show, but if not, I've certainly said it in conversation. The issues that we have from relationships stem from the relationships of our past, whether that's our relationships with our parents, could be our siblings, could be our previous romantic partners.
That's our fingerprint. Yeah.
Yes. And so you and I do not have the challenges we have with relationships because we read the wrong relationship book and it gave us bad advice.
Good point. Yeah.
We have the problems we have with relationships today because of the relationships we've had before.
Yeah.
And since our problems don't come from the wrong book or the wrong podcast, they're not going to be solved by the right book or the right podcast. They're going to be solved by other relationships with other people, whether that's a support group, whether that's therapy, whether that's making friends with new kinds of people who have healthy patterns and behaviors that we haven't seen modeled before.
Yeah.
You can't fix a relationship-based problem with a informational solution. Relationships fix relationships.
I think part of the problem with that I experience is I feel really good listening to podcasts and listening to getting new ideas that hits that dopamine rush. Oh, I never thought about it that way. Getting excited. When it comes time to actually doing the work, that's uncomfortable.
Oh,
so that good feeling goes away. So it's very easy to just not do anything other than listen to podcasts and read books about stuff and hear these wonderful ideas and literally get high off of these ideas. and not actually put the work in and implement them, because that takes thought and energy and work, and we don't want to do that.
Well, and
our brains are wired to not do
exposure and vulnerability. I mean,
that too.
When I think about my therapy sessions, when I think about my recovery group, they're net positives, but listening to a new audiobook is 100% positive. There's almost no downside.
Yeah.
I don't have a profoundly deep sense of guilt, shame, or really any negative emotional experience listening to a new book or a new podcast.
And the other thing about this is it's completely anonymous. So
yes, exactly.
If you're listening to something, for example, like giving up alcohol or something that would be a little bit like, if everybody on the world knew Charles was listening to a book on quitting alcohol, I'd be like, what's going on?
Exactly. I didn't know you had a problem.
We'll change it a little bit.
Looks at those questions. Absolutely. We're doing it out in the open in front of another human.
Yeah.
It's a lot harder.
Anonymous, yeah.
Which is why it's more valuable.
Yeah.
That's why it's more effective, because it's harder.
Yeah.
Doing air squats isn't bad for you, but you're not going to become a competitive lifter in the squat by just doing air squats. It just doesn't work that way.
Right.
Let's talk about the last one. This was also my bottom. Now, I wasn't a 0. You were a 0 on requesting forgiveness.
Talk is cheap.
I was like at 8. Like, having someone come to me and say, will you forgive me for this? It just, compared to the other 4, it does almost nothing for me. For you, it does nothing for you.
For me, you almost make it worse.
Oh,
because you're asking something of me and you're not offering
good point.
anything.
That's a good point.
Other than words. You're not saying, I'm sorry for blah, blah, blah. That would be better. I think that was my 12%. If you're just like, will you forgive me for this?
I think I'm on that.
Why should I?
I'm on that page with you, because if somebody gives me I'm sorry, I was wrong, let me make it up to you, here's how I'm not going to do it again. You give me those 4, whether or not you tack on the will you please forgive me, it really doesn't move the needle for me. If you do the first 4, it's whether you put that on at the end or not. It would make things worse if you said, will you forgive me? But it's not going to make things better either. It's just,
For me, it makes it worse.
Even if they've done the other 4?
No.
Yeah, I'm saying a scenario where they've said the other 4 and then they decide to tack on, you forgive me at the end.
At the end, okay.
Yeah.
I was saying, before you do any of those things, if that comes also with will you forgive me, let me see, before I forgive you, I need to see something.
Yeah, the will you forgive me is, that's basically just giving the other person, will you forgive me alone without the others?
Yeah.
Is just saying, okay, now I did this thing to bother you. Now I need you to do something really hard or make me feel better by saying that you'll forgive me.
Yeah. And I feel like it's almost disrespectful, because I don't have to do anything. I made a mistake and I think so little of you that I don't have to do anything. And I've got the balls to ask you to forgive me for this.
But,
you know, say a little bit of nuance here, I'm sure. Yeah.
Examples he gives, not just that.
Okay, so let's go through that.
All 4 of these I feel are lacking in one way or another. So we'll do the bad ones first.
All right.
First one, last time I looked, only God has the power to forgive. I said I was sorry. It's not good enough. I don't know what to tell you. So obviously that's terrible. The other negative one is, I wish you would quit playing the victim. So you got hurt. Boo-hoo. Life goes on. Get over it.
Wow.
These aren't apologies.
That's just insult.
How can I make this worse?
Yeah.
Yes, it's like Don Rickles up there doing insult comedy. These are not anything close to an apology. The 2 that are the models of a good apology for somebody whose language is requesting forgiveness, I find them also to be not very good for a couple reasons. First, I'm sorry for the way I spoke to you. I know it was loud and intense. You didn't deserve that. It was very wrong of me, and I want to ask you to forgive me. But saying I want to ask you to forgive me is like me saying I want to ask you out on a date. The reasonable answer in both cases is, okay, so do it.
Yeah.
Like, you're just voicing an intention of something you'd like to do. That's not the same as saying, would you please consider forgiving me?
It's weak.
I want to ask you to forgive me. Why would he think that's okay? Yeah, it's because that's not asking someone to forgive you. Not saying that you would like to.
Can I ask you a question?
Exactly. So that would annoy me for that reason. Here's another one. I know that what I did hurt you very deeply. You have every right never to speak to me again, but I am truly sorry for what I did, and I hope that you can find it in your heart to forgive me. You have every right not to speak. Okay, you say that to your wife, that's just being overdramatic. You have every right to never talk to me again.
And now it's insincere. to me.
It feels extremely insincere.
Because now you're going to the other extreme.
You're like, that's taking on
You're an actor at this point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that just reeks of over dramatic effect to me. You have every right never to talk to me again, where you're completely justified in being extremely upset and extremely hurt. That's a real thing to say.
Yeah.
You have a right never to speak to me again. That's something a high school boy says to his high school girlfriend.
I feel like that's a cop-out, so you don't actually have to do the hard work of actually making a change or issue some sort of restitution. That's, to me, can I get away with just acting really upset about it?
Exactly. If I bring up...
Or do I actually have to make a change? Because I don't want to do that.
Yeah, that, for whatever reason, that really turned me off when I read that. I was like, this is bullshit.
Yeah.
You don't say, you have a right never to speak to me again, or I understand if you never want to see me again. It feels like just something a dramatic fictional character would do when they put their hand over,
honestly, if somebody said that to me in a relationship, that'd be the beginning of the end. I'd be looking to get out at that point.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, wow, you're being over dramatic like this. Like, who are you? You're going to be acting that way in other situations now, I'm assuming.
Probably, yeah.
And with other people.
Here's the version of this I've done before. Oh, okay, I guess it's 100% my fault. I take on full responsibility. This is all on me. You've never done anything wrong. Stuff like
yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what's interesting? Because I heard the monotone in your voice when you're just saying that now, which is of not really feeling anything.
Exactly.
Right? It's just throwing it out there.
Or even when you say it sincerely, it's basically saying, I value my shame experience that I'm having right now more than you or this relationship. You called me on something I did that was wrong, and I agree that it was wrong, but now I'm going to...
Now I'm suffering.
I'm going to retreat inside to my own personal shame, and so I've definitely done that before, and it has exactly the result that you think it would.
Yeah.
Sucks.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the thing that kind of set me off again toward the end of this part of requesting forgiveness. Asking for forgiveness is an admission of guilt. It shows that you deserve some degree of condemnation or punishment. Those two words, man, they rub me the wrong way big time.
Yeah.
Condemnation or punishment. I deserve condemnation or punishment.
Yeah.
And then
that's a bit extreme.
Requesting forgiveness shows that you are willing to put the future of your relationship in the hands of your wife. Okay, I would say requesting forgiveness of someone does say you're willing to give up some power to them. And I think that's valuable. It just... this is not something, if somebody told me this is what they need from me, I think it would be fairly easy for me to meet that request because it doesn't really move the needle for me, as we've already discussed.
Yeah.
I need you to say, will you forgive me? Okay, sure, I'll say that because it's all like nothing to me.
Yeah. Again, for me, because that's not my primary language, I would then be on the lookout. I'd be micromanaging and going, okay, is this going to happen again? Because to me, that doesn't mean enough. Just saying, I forgive you, I release you of this obligation to make up for the wrong that you did by just saying a word. To me, now I'm doing something that I don't want to do in any relationship, which is micromanage and pay a lot of attention to things because now I'm a little concerned because we're on different pages. If you think that it's enough for you to just be granted a word from me and not want to do anything differently or change, I need to feel that in some way.
Yeah, what I'm wondering is, how would you feel though if you had a partner who said, when you do something that bothers me, all that I need to hear is you asking me for my forgiveness? How would you feel about that? Would you be okay with that? I don't need you to say, I'm sorry. I don't need you to say, I'm wrong. I don't need you to say, I'll make it up to you. I don't need you to say, here's why it won't happen again. All I need for you to do, Dan, is say, will you forgive me?
Probably not, because that's not how I operate. And now I'm concerned that she's not the kind of person I thought she was, or the kind of person that I want to be with, because now I'm thinking she's thinking in a way that just doesn't comprehend or jive with the way that I think about things. So again, what are these, how is this going to show up in other situations? Because I feel like that's, while you're putting up with, I feel like a lot by just being okay with me saying, oh, I'm sorry, and then moving on.
Will you forgive me?
Will you forgive me?
Yeah. And that's
so,
it reminds me of parents who are you need to say, I'm sorry to your sister, but I'm not sorry, but you just need to say it anyway. And I've heard that. Yeah. Yeah. But why would I say what's in it for you or my sister to hear me say words that everyone knows I don't believe?
I think everyone's in a situation where then you just throw a, I'm sorry, kind of one of those, right? And that's where you start.
But as an adult,
It causes a whole other blow up, right? It's just like
I've heard that demand from a parent when I was already old enough to have the conversation of,
oh, wow,
I'm not sorry for this. And I've told you I'm not sorry. I told you I'm not going to change this behavior. But for you, there's something in it for you to hear me insincerely just make the noises with my mouth. Like, that's what you want me to do.
Wow, you laid it out exactly like that.
Probably in late high school or college.
Holy cow.
And they said, yes, I want you to say it even though you don't mean it. Yeah, you and I, we're not on the same page about how humans should interact with each other.
Exactly.
This is insane to me.
Yeah. Doesn't make any sense. So
no.
Just, okay, what are the things that we completely disagree about that are important?
Yeah, it's up there with, no offense to our religious listeners, it's like, if you kill this chicken on this particular altar, then you'll have good crops next year.
Yeah.
It seems to be like some weird superstitious connection. I need you to make the noises that sound like I'm sorry, even though I know you're not sorry and you don't believe it. I need to hear those words because those words will do something magical for me.
So I think you're onto something because it's similar to OCD. So some people, some OCDs, I need to go back and check that I turned the oven off, and you do that 2 or 3 or 4 times or whatever, when you weren't even like using the oven. But I have heard that in some cases, people need to be told certain things to ease their OCD tendencies.
Interesting.
Even if there is no meaning behind it. And it's not like if there's an issue or like apologizing for something, it's like one of those where it's like, you didn't wish me a good flight. Right.
Oh, I've heard that.
And now it's so that along the lines of a superstition or just same thing. Some people, they wear, if their favorite team won the Super Bowl and they're wearing a specific underwear at that time, they wear that every time they're playing a game now. Right. It's just, so I think it's a little, maybe some OCD stuff, maybe some superstitious stuff. I'm sure I've got some things that I do just out of habit, or they make me feel a little bit better, even though they really probably don't do anything.
Oh, sure. I keep a list.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Nice.
All the things that you do like that.
Yeah. But maybe it's something like that. In the case that you were talking about, they just need to hear that you said you were sorry.
Yeah. I guess it's got to be, there's got to be some value in that ritual for some people.
Yeah.
I'm sure I've got some of those things too, but it's hard for them. Like if somebody pointed out one of those things to me that I do, it feels like that would break the spell. You know?
Oh, interesting. Okay.
There's somebody trying to light on, hey,
yeah, it could be
thing, or you want this thing, and you would agree that there's no reason for it. I like to think that would
possible,
maybe not. But anyway, so yes, the final point is, you got to offer sincere apologies in the way that people can hear them. There are going to be cases where you're apologizing purely for the impact of your actions, even when you had the best of intentions. And so you didn't do something morally wrong that still had a negative effect on somebody you care about. And so you still, in that case, to mend things, you still have to say, hey, I'm sorry when I said such and such, it hurt your feelings. Because the question you got to ask yourself is, even though you didn't do anything morally wrong, if you had it to do over again and you knew that different actions would have a more positive effect on your partner, would you do things differently? And if the answer is yes, then it shouldn't be that hard for you to apologize for that thing. If you could wind back the clock of the universe and go about something in a different way that would not lead your partner's feelings to get hurt, would you take that opportunity, or would you say, no, I didn't do anything wrong, I'd do it exactly the same way? If your answer is I'd do it exactly the same way, even knowing that it hurt them, then you're definitely not ready to apologize. You might not be ready to be in a relationship.
Yeah, I feel like this part is probably the most important part of the book, because when there's something to apologize for, I really feel like it's a make or break moment in that relationship.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of the direction it starts to spin.
Exactly. It's going to put you in a direction.
Yes. And whether if you handle it the right way, it can bring you a lot closer together, and it's an opportunity in that direction. And if you don't handle it well, it could be quickly spiraling towards the end at that point, because now you're revealing the kind of person that you are, and the other person is revealing the kind of person that they are. So get a hold of this and get skilled in recognizing how to apologize, get good at it, And take the quiz too. That was insightful.
Yeah, you can take the 5 apologies language quiz online for free. That didn't cost us anything. And the back of the book, and look, I bought this 5 love languages for men book used online for $5. And it comes with a 30-question love language quiz for him and for her. You can also get the free version of the quiz online. One of the things I will say, though, is the guy who said one of these apologies, "Oh, I'm sorry, but if the things I do keep offending you, maybe you're the one who needs to change." Did you ever think about that horrible apology? If you do find yourself in a position where you are constantly offending your partner and you're constantly apologizing for something that both of you agree isn't morally wrong, it's just the way you speak, the way you carry yourself, whatever, is constantly putting your partner in an activated state where she's upset. You definitely don't want to say maybe she needs to change, but you do need to, I think it's only fair to take a look at your compatibility as a partner. Having a certain set of values, a sense of humor, a way about communicating thoughts and ideas with people that at its core level is offensive and upsetting to somebody you're with, it is worth asking the question of, okay, are these just preferences and habits of my own that I can modify and I can change? Or is it my personality and the way I view humor and language is just at odds with the way that she does, and we're probably not going to be able to get past this? I would certainly bring a third party in for those kinds of questions, because that's a big deal. You don't want to just write off a relationship to say, okay, I like these comedians and she thinks they're offensive, so we can't be together. But it could be that you guys are mismatched as far as your temperament, your sense of humor, what offends you, your politics, all those things. If you find yourself constantly in a position where you're apologizing for things that both of you agree are moral failings, they're not character defects, but one or both of you are still always offended by the way the other person expresses themselves, then yeah, you should ask yourself, okay, are these changeable things, or are these deeply ingrained in my personality that I'm not going to be changing?
Yeah. Communication is difficult enough. But now, if your natural way of communicating is almost causing more harm than good, you're swimming upstream, man, trying to stay in that relationship, because not only are you trying to communicate and manage emotions, both people, but now the form and the way that you're communicating are actually potentially causing more harm because the other person's offended in some way or doesn't understand the way you're expressing yourself. I think that's a recipe for disaster, and you definitely need a new.
Yeah, but I will say this discussion could very easily be hijacked by a person with an avoidant attachment style to give them an excuse to always dump their way out of relationships too soon and not do any work on themselves. So my advice would be default to the idea of most of the things about the way you communicate can be changed. And there's a good chance that you just have adopted coping mechanisms and defense mechanisms that kind of make you a little gruffer or a little rougher than you absolutely have to be in the healthiest version of yourself. So assume that there is work to be done, that there are lots of things you can do to make your communication better. But if you're trying that, if you're trying new methods, you're trying new things, you're doing uncomfortable things to improve yourself, and
they're not working,
bring in a third party and say, look, I've got this concern, and by third party, a professional, and say, I've tried all these things, I've got this concern that maybe our communication styles are just incompatible. I want to know if there's more work I can do, or if I'm banging my head against the wall, and her and I would both be better off in different relationships. So yeah, don't let it be like this guy just say, hey, look, this is just the way I am, and maybe you're the one that should change.
Yeah.
But be open to the possibility that, look, most relationships are mismatches. They're not going to work long term. When you factor in every dating relationship, marriage, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, 3% of them will survive and the rest of them will fail. So there's a strong possibility you're in a mismatch situation. Now, is that a mismatch situation that can be overcome with effort? There's a good chance that it is. Are there some that can't be? There's also a good chance that's the case. So just try to look at it realistically and talk to people you trust about it and people that are qualified to offer good advice.
Absolutely.
All right. I enjoyed that one, Dan. Thanks very much. We will take a break, and then we'll hit the frequently asked questions, which I think you and I should be able to get through fairly quickly. And then we'll be done with this book, and we'll talk about what we're doing next.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks. Wow. You made it through the whole thing. So you must like us at least a little bit. in which case you should definitely follow or subscribe to our show in your chosen podcast app. Thanks. We'll talk to you next time.